Okay, so here's the sign quiz answer key. You should have seen that earlier because it was attached to the previous assignment, and you should have handed that in for me to mark and look things over to make sure you're showing your work properly. Today we're looking at cosine. So originally we looked at tangent, then we looked at sine, and now we're going to go to cosine. So cosine still involving the right angle. However, now cosine is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. So sine, down here we have it. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, tangent is opposite over adjacent, and now today we're going to look at cos, which is adjacent over hypotenuse. So just to review, if we're looking at angle A right here, this would be the hypotenuse because it's across from 90 degrees. This would be the opposite of angle A because it's opposite angle A. And the side that's left over then is the adjacent. Okay, and you get that by drawing these arrows. Like if you physically draw them, you can't get it wrong. Always label in that order, hypotenuse first, then your opposite, and then your adjacent. So I say label your HOA, and I say that so you remember to use this proper order. Okay, A, D, J. So the abbreviations, here we have sine is opposite over hypotenuse. In the mnemonic, the S and O and H makes the word so. Cos, C stands for A and H, is ka, and toa, T-O-A. Ask your parents, they might even remember SOHCAHTOA. So it's a little mnemonic to help you remember the ratios. Okay. Let's get going. Determine the primary and cosine ratios accurate to 4 decimals for the following triangle. So what we're going to do is find cos j. Cos j equals opposite, better label our HOA. Here's your hypotenuse. There's your j opposite. And the last one is your adjacent. Now I said opposite, but I meant adjacent. Cos j is your adjacent side, 8 over 17. And what about cos g? Well, remember, if you change angles, you change your HOA. Because according to angle G, if this is my angle of interest now, this would be your opposite side, and this would be your adjacent side. So when you switch angles, you switch your HOA, and cos G now becomes 15 over 17. So there's your ratios as fractions, and for most of us, most questions, that's going to be fine. However, it does say go to 4 decimals, so you should turn that fraction to a decimal. With older calculators, we have to always do this, but now this is kind of a thing in the past I'm finding. But some questions will ask that 4 decimals, 0.8823, 0.8823. Good. And for cos then, 8 divided by 17, so you turn your fraction to a decimal, 0.4705. So 0.4705, and that is cos j. So you can see very different ratios depending on which angle you're looking at. So it's important to note the angle, write your HOA so you don't get these wrong. So another example, find the cos j ratios. We can leave them as fractions now. So let's start with angle L. Label your HOA, hypotenuse, opposite, adjacent. So we have cos L equals 6 over, well, in order to figure that out, we got to do Pythagoras. So you should have done some research to figure out Pythagoras. This is the hypotenuse, so we will add our squares. And so I'll add them up again. I got 144 plus 36. So NL squared equals 180. So then NL equals square root 180. So cos L equals 6 over root 180. And then what about N? So if I switch angles, I switch my HOA. So now this becomes the opposite and just this becomes the adjacent. Really important to know that. Switch angles, switch your HOAs. So cos angle N equals the adjacent side of 12 over the hypotenuse of root 180. Notice root 180 stays for both of them because it's the same hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the hypotenuse of the hypotenuse. All right, so that's the first step, is setting up our ratios. The next step now is then going to find the angles. So here we're going to do that for this question. Find it, angle G to the nearest degree. So here's angle G, label my HOA, hypotenuse, opposite, adjacent, perfect. I can use 6. So I can use cosine. Cos G equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Now I move cos to the other side, it becomes cos -1, 6 divided by 14. So that's what fractions are, they're divisions. You got to remember that. So my older calculator, which works the old method, I go 6 divided by 14 and press equals to do the division. Now that I have my decimal value of the ratio, I will go inverse cos, or second function cos, and I get 64.6 degrees, which rounds up to 65 degrees. So remember, you always got to round. Okay. This angles go to the nearest degree. Now, what about cos h equals, well, the problem is, let me just change my writing, which I should have done. For cos h, you don't know the adjacent side. You don't know what that is. So what could you do to find it? Because remember, this would be my opposite for h, and this would be my adjacent. Well, you would have to do Pythagoras. In order to find that adjacent side and use cosine, you would have to do Pythagoras. Is there an easier way to find the angle? Yes, there is. We showed you this little trick. All triangles add up to 180 degrees. So if you subtract the 90 degrees and you subtract the 65 degrees, you will get this third angle. So it's easy. Once you get two angles, you can then do a subtraction to find that third angle. And you get 25 degrees. I just want to show you the calculator sequence for the red with the new calculator. The new calculator, you put it in as you see it. So I will turn this on. I will go clear. I will second function cos, so I get the yellow writing. So there's cos -1, 6 divided by 14. And I must have brackets to tell my calculator to do that division first and then do cos -1. And I still get 64.6. Okay. All right. Next one. Here we go. Find the measures of K and M accurate to the nearest tenth of a degree. So which one should I find first, K or M? Well, we're doing cosine, so we'd want to find K first. So we'd say cos K equals opposite. This would be my hypotenuse, this would be my opposite, and this would be my adjacent. So cos K equals adjacent 3 over 8. Sorry, I'm not sure why I'm messing that up today. And move cos to the other side, and then find your answer. New style calculator, I put it in as I see it. So inverse cos, got to get the yellow writing. 3 divided by 8, close it off to tell the calculator to do that first. Then do cos -1. And 67.9, so I round to a whole number, 68 degrees. You must, in your work, always have something there. Super important. You can never ever leave that blank. It cannot just be cos and equal sign. You must have either the letter or the angle in that location. So how would we find M? Well, we could use sine, or we could just go 180 minus. So 180 minus 68 minus 90, it doesn't really matter the order. And what are you going to get? 180 minus 90. You notice that clear. You notice that 180 minus 90 is 90? Yeah, you don't really have to do that, do you? You just go 90 minus 68. And our answer is 22 degrees. Okay. So that's finding the angle. Now we're going to find the side lengths. So find the side lengths here. I would label my HOA. Here's my angle of interest. Here is my hypotenuse. Here's my opposite side. And here is my adjacent side. And it says to find NM, and this is side NM. So I'll use cos. Cos 25 degrees equals adjacent NM over 23.5, which is your hypotenuse. Instead of dividing here by 23.5, I'll bring it up and do the opposite, times by 23.5. I like to use multiplication brackets because that's what we do with higher level math, but it's your choice for now. Now, on a new calculator, I type it in as I see it. On the older school calculator, the old method, I go 23.5 times 25, and then it's cos, so that's cos 25, press equals to the multiplication. 21.29, so I'll round to 21.3. Good. Next one, 37 degrees, label your HOA, hypotenuse, it's across 90, opposite, and adjacent, and yes, we have cos. So we will say cos 38.7 degrees equals adjacent 5,000 over the distance. So I'll say the letter D. And so I will bring the D up and times it by cos 38.7 degrees. So I'm doing the opposite of dividing by D, I'm multiplying by D. Then I'll do the opposite of multiplying by cos. I'll divide by cos. So 5,000 divided by cos 38.7. And go to my calculator. I'll use my new calculator. Type it in as I see it. 5,000 divided by cos 38.7. And I'll close that off just because I like to. 6,406.7. 6406.7, and that will be feet because we're measured in feet. So we'll find our answer in feet. Correct? Yep. So on an older calculator, or the calculator that has the old method, like our phones, even if you have a brand new phone, it's using this old method of calculator. Don't know why, but it does. I go 5,000 divided by 38.7. And then I press cos, that's the cos of 38.7. Now I press equals to do the division and get the exact same answer. Okay, there you have it. So today we're dealing cos, but you'll notice that these are the only real questions I can ask you. Right here, these three questions, the only thing I do differently, sometimes I ask you for the ratio first as a fraction or as a decimal. But that's it, that's all I can ask you. You can't ask any more. Okay, you can do some Pythagoras, you can do your triangles, subtracting your angles, but really this is it. You're just doing this over and over and knowing how to use it properly. But your work is not going to change. You're not going to have new work to do for the rest of the unit, but we're going to make sure we're experts in this because this gets harder and you add on to it in grade 10. All right, homework time.